It's time to give my predictions for the underrated yet at the same time terrible fight night headlined by Yadong and Chris Gutierrez. I'm going to be predicting every single fight on this card. It is time to change this around, guys. If anyone has watched my channel, you know I usually clean up fight nights. They call me the janitor for a reason because I get the job done. I clean up house, but it's going to be tricky this time because the MMA gods have really been fluking it up lately, man. All jokes aside, it's time for me to give my picks. This fight night, it's actually got a lot of good fights, a lot of up-and-coming talent, a lot of high-level skill. That's because we have a lot of lighter weight classes on this card. We also have the return of the king, Anthony Smith, the most respected, lionized fighter in the game. Of course, guys, it's time to tip our caps. The captain is back. Every time this man fights, he rewrites history. And of course, we have the useless main event, Song Yadong and Chris Gutierrez, one of the most pointless main events that the UFC has ever put on. Now, yes, you can make the argument that this was a good layup for Song Yadong. It was supposed to be in China, but they moved it to the Apex, and now it's just useless. As I said, Song Yadong just beat like the number 13 ranked guy, and now he's facing the number 14 ranked guy in Chris Gutierrez, who no one really particularly likes that much. It does nothing for him. He's in a similar position to Arman Tsarukyan, who just time after time had to fight the same outside of the top 10 opponents, no matter how many finishes he could get. But enough with the complaining. Outside of the useless main event, there's a lot of skill on display. If you guys are interested in a particular take of mine on one of these fights, go to the timestamps in the description. Let's get to it. Daniel Marcos versus Carlos Vera. Now, Daniel Marcos is 15-0. All right, he just beat Davy Grant. He's undefeated. And even though, in my opinion, I think that Davy Grant got robbed, to be honest, at least it was close enough to where you could give it to Marcos. All right, yes, it was a robbery, but my point is he made it close with Davy Grant, and I respect Davy Grant's skill set. Whereas Carlos Vera is a 36-year-old failed prospect that couldn't even make it out of tough. I don't know why the UFC is giving this dude a contract. Doesn't it defeat the entire purpose of the fucking show to begin with? Why are you giving someone a UFC contract if they don't win fights on tough? It doesn't make sense. This was going to be like Conor's best guy, Carlos Vera. And we already know how shitty Conor's team is. We already know that tough is just not a efficient way to get noticed, to make it into the UFC. You've got to go onto a reality show that no one watches. You've got to get rid of your phone. You've got to put your life on pause, whereas you could just be on the Dana White Contender Series. And I get it. Not everyone's going to have the opportunity to be invited to the Dana White Contender Series, but Carlos Vera is not good. 36, lost to Brad Katona. Brad Katona is a pretty similar level to Daniel Marcos, and Marcos is good enough to at least make it close with Davy Grant. He's beating Carlos Vera. Failed tough prospect, 36 years old, bro. I'm not impressed by these tough guys, all right? You think you're a tough guy, huh? Well, I'm not impressed. Straight up. Dana White Contender Series is where it's at, and I'm pretty sure Daniel Marcos made it out the mud on the Dana White Contender Series. Wait, did he actually? Maybe not. No, he didn't. Oh, yeah, he did. I'm picking Daniel Marcos to get it done by decision, all right? Let me go by decision. He's got decent striking. He's got a good hard noggin on him, so I'm going with Daniel Marcos to get this one done over the 36-year-old prospect that was on Conor's team, and we know how bad Conor's team was. Steve Garcia and Melquizael Costa, okay? This is a fight that was supposed to be on last week's card. I was going to pick Steve Garcia because I was looking at Melquizael. This is the guy that has a skin condition, and he looks really interesting because he's got like dyed pink hair and whatnot. And I was saying, dude, I'm not picking Melquizael Costa just because he looks cool or whatnot. But then I rewatched his fights, and he actually looks great. Melquizael Costa has insanely good striking. His kicking game is nutty. It's off the charts. Steve Garcia always has a puncher's chance. Now, if you don't know who Steve Garcia is, this is the guy that chinned Chase Hooper and sent him packing to the 155 division. But Melquizael, he's a big guy. He's got a good chin, and I think he's going to knock out Steve Garcia, who is, in my opinion, one of the most entertaining fighters in the game and is one of the very few featherweights that actually has KO power. He's a must-see TV guy. This is going to be a must-watch matchup, but I just think that Garcia's style is so 50-50. It really is kill or be killed, and he's been flatlined multiple times in his career. It's a live by the sword, die by the sword mentality that he has. He's got a really long reach. He's explosive. He's powerful. But Melquizael Costa is a big dude dropping down from the 155-pound division. He's only lost to Thiago Moises. He got out-grappled in that fight. But what I really like from Melquizael and why I'm picking him to knock this dude out in Steve Garcia, who don't be surprised if Garcia lays Melquizael out too. But I'm rocking with Costa because he's really good at stopping people in their tracks as they move forward. He's got a nice rhythm. He's got high output, great kicks, head kicks, body kicks, leg kicks, you name it. He can chop you down like a tree. And I think he's going to catch Steve Garcia coming in, who's going to be like rushing in, chin on a silver platter, looking for the big KO shot. And I could just see Melquizael slipping him onto a head kick. But don't be surprised if Steve Garcia, the guy that sent Chase Hooper packing into the 155-pound division, knocks out Melquizael. But Costa's looking really, really good on the feet. And I just think he's more talented. I think he's a better striker. So I got to go with him in this one. A head kick can knock out anyone, especially if you don't have the best chin to begin with. So must watch fight. Do not miss this one. And now it's time to break down a big one. Next up, we have Carlos Hernandez versus Tatsuro Taira. Big matchup, must-see matchup. Carlos Hernandez is the guy that finished Denis Bondar, but for whatever reason, it's listed as a decision, a technical decision. Essentially, it was the worst stoppage I've seen all year. One of the most brutal finishes I've ever seen. I don't remember why it wasn't put down as a TKO. Maybe you guys can remind me in the comments, but I remember outside of that stoppage, leaving that fight thinking to myself that Carlos Hernandez is the real deal. This guy's really freaking good on the feet. He's got great hands. He's crisp. Like, it's just one of those things with the eye test, especially in the flyweight division. If you see a flyweight that looks impressive on the feet, they got good hands, they got power, they look slick, it really stands off because everyone in the flyweight division, except for Tatsuro Taira, that is quick. They got hands. They're pretty slick. Carlos Hernandez is a guy that stands out from the pack at flyweight, okay? If this fight takes place on the feet, if Tatsuro Taira struggles to get this fight to the ground, he's screwed, okay? Tatsuro Taira has one weapon in his arsenal, and that's a low kick, and there ain't a lot of sting on it, all right? And when I say this, I really mean it. This is the least dangerous fighter in the history of the flyweight division, in my opinion, on the feet right now. He just beat Edgar Chairez, almost got finished in the third round by a guillotine, but he dominated the majority of the fight. And I am picking Tatsuro Taira, so don't jump at me yet. I'm picking Tatsuro Taira to beat Carlos Hernandez because Hernandez has been submitted before. He doesn't have special grappling or special takedown defense, and Tatsuro Taira is a guy that's going to be able to take this fight to the ground, and I think he'll sub Carlos Hernandez. But Tatsuro's striking is just terrible, okay? And it's not only the fact that this guy doesn't necessarily have like a wide variety of weapons, but he's so slow on the feet. Like, he's got this really slow twitch looking striking, okay? And not only that, he's very hesitant. It looks like he's not confident to throw his punches. And if you're not confident, if you're hesitant, if you're reluctant while letting your hands go, it's just going to look so forced. Pair that with the lack of speed, the lack of explosive ability, which most flyweights have. This is a KO waiting to happen on the feet. If you are looking for a decent underdog, this would be the guy. I really do think that out of everyone that Tatsuro Taira has ever fought, Jesus Aguilar, shortest reach in the UFC, 62-inch reach. He beat him. Edgar Chairez, CJ Vergara, Carlos Candelario. Out of everyone that Tatsuro Taira has fought, Carlos Hernandez is head and shoulders the best striker, the most dangerous striker. He's slick. He's fast. He will get KO'd on the feet if he struggles to take this man down. And I guarantee you that, okay? But I am going to go with Tatsuro Taira. One thing you can't deny is that this guy is really talented when it comes to the ground game. His ground and pound is great. His submission game is great. I am going to pick him to submit Carlos Hernandez, and I'll go with a first or second round submission. Song Kenan versus Kevin Jousset. Kevin Jousset fights out of City Kickboxing, has a similar looking style to Israel Adesanya. He's coming off of a first round submission over Kiefer Crosby, the hyped up Irishman. Sad that Ireland has such a lack of prospects, that Kiefer Crosby was the guy that was getting a lot of hype as the big puncher from Ireland. which really makes it even worse that Ian Gary is their best fighter. If you just look at who Ian Gary is as a person, I wish that he was a little bit more likable. But back to my point, man. I'm going to go with Kevin Jousset to beat Song Kenan. Now, I did pick Song Kenan to lose his last fight. He fought Rolando Bedoya, which is a shoot box guy that surprised everyone with his really good performance against Chaos Williams. And I'm pretty sure they fought to a draw, but if you know the name Chaos Williams, you know how dangerous he is. Rolando Bedoya beat him up for the majority of the fight, and somehow, some way, they gave it a draw. So I was confident that this young shoot box guy that looks pretty good in his UFC debut is going to beat the old man Song Kenan, who is a 500 level fighter. This guy was getting his ass kicked way back in the day against Adesanya as well. He's fought Adesanya. I think that Kevin Jousset, new up-and-coming guy, how old is he? He was born in 1993, so he's not like that young, but, you know, first-round finish over Kiefer Crosby, has a submission game, knows how to impose his will, looked pretty good on the feet as well. I'm going to go with him. He's bigger than Song Kenan. He has a longer reach than Song Kenan, and I just don't see Song Kenan winning this fight unless he somehow knocks out Jousset with, like, the perfect shot. I'll go with Kevin Jousset to outstrike him by decision. On to the next fight. This is one that you have to watch as well. Not going to call him the dark horse of the middleweight division because I think that Brendan Allen is the dark horse of the middleweight division, but we have JunYong Park, the Iron Turtle, one of my favorite prospects in the UFC, versus Andre Muniz, who is, in my opinion, one of the most overrated jiu-jitsu specialists in the UFC as well. Everyone knows Andre Muniz as the guy that submitted Jacare Souza, who was a geriatric, who was basically needing a cane at that point in his career. And we had Dan Hardy talking about Andre Muniz as the guy to really be the one to give a guy like Izzy problems. You know, I can't wait till Andre Muniz gets his hands on Izzy. You guys remember all the nonsense about Andre Muniz, but he's gotten beat a couple of times, right? He's gotten knocked out on the ground by Paul Craig. We just saw Brendan Allen go out there and clean up Paul Craig like it was nothing. And we saw Andre Muniz get outstruck by Brendan Allen. Actually got choked out by Brendan Allen, not really outstruck. JunYong Park, let's cut the bullshit. This guy looks like a math teacher, a 50-year-old math teacher. You would never think he's a UFC fighter. Small for the middleweight division. Doesn't look to be in particular great shape. But the way that this guy moves at middleweight, and he just beat Albert Duraev. Bro, I know that we usually talk about middleweight as being kind of shitty, but this was a high-level looking fight. Albert Duraev looked great. JunYong Park was stalking him down with one of the cleanest jabs I've seen in a long time at middleweight from the most unsuspecting guy you could ever imagine. You have this 50-year-old math teacher lookalike. He's fucking popping him with a jab. He's beating him up. He's marching him down. He's getting a hold of him. And eventually he takes him down, hurts him, and submits him. Andre Muniz, he's good on the ground, but JunYong Park is good everywhere. He's got a submission game. Most of his finishes come from submissions. The only guy in recent memory that he's lost to is Gregory Rodriguez. And Gregory Rodriguez, when that guy pulls his grappling out, he's just a fucking monster overall. But I'm going to go with JunYong Park confidently to finish Andre Muniz, to put it on this man. And I think that one thing that stands out about JunYong Park is that he's got a super well-rounded game. He's got high output. He knows how to impose his will and stalk people down. Whereas Andre Muniz, he's got a freakishly long reach, doesn't know how to use it. He's got this jiu-jitsu game, doesn't know how to impose his will with the ground game, doesn't really know how to go out there and take people down and really take it to him. Andre Muniz, high output, doesn't gas out, cardio off the charts. That's going to be the difference maker in this fight. And I think that the Iron Turtle is going to go out there, put a jab on the face of Andre Muniz, give him no respect, and just break him with relentless pressure. And I think that I could see a submission in there once he tires out Andre Muniz, starts to put it on him. He knocked down Albert Duraev too, so he's got some pop in his hands. Before that, he submitted Dennis Tululin. He submitted Joseph Holmes. He beat Eric Anders. He's beat Marc-Andre Barriou. He's beat John Phillips. He's beat Tefon Njatukwi. Like, this guy is really good in the middleweight division. He's only really lost to Gregory Rodriguez and Anthony Hernandez, and those guys are solid in this division too. Andre Muniz, total fraud. Again, got way too much hype for beating Jacare Souza. There's really no reason to pick him in this fight. He's not, in my opinion, the better MMA grappler than JunYong Park. Just because he has that over Jacare Souza, you're looking too deeply into that win if you're picking him in this one. JunYong Park is going to steamroll this man and finish him. I'm going to go with a second-round submission, breaking Andre Muniz, dropping him, and subbing him. Let's get on to the next fight. Nasrat Haqparast versus Jamie Mullarkey. Now, this is where it really gets interesting because, as you know, Nasrat Haqparast is a UFC legend, one of the best boxers to ever step foot in the octagon. And Jamie Mullarkey is someone that just brings a tear to my eye every time I watch him because it's like you're just watching greatness every time this guy comes out. You're watching greatness. And it's an Aussie legend. He's like the Nate Diaz of Australia, is what I would be saying if I was a hardcore wannabe fan. You're not missing anything if you miss this fight. Two guys that are mediocre, that don't really know how to impose their will. Jamie Mullarkey is one of those mediocre guys that every once in a while can catch someone and knock them out. He knocked out Kama Worthy back in the day. Really good KO, but Kama Worthy's got no chin, and for whatever reason, people are thinking of Jamie Mullarkey as like, they basically describe Jamie Mullarkey as we would describe Jack Della Maddalena. And I know Aussie fans really ride for their fighters heavily, but there's nothing to see with Jamie Mullarkey, and that could also be said for Nasrat Haqparast. No disrespect to these guys, but these are the epitome of 500-level fighters that just, again, you're not missing anything. All right, Nasrat Haqparast is the mediocre boxer, and Jamie Mullarkey is the mediocre brawler, kickboxer on the feet. I'm going to go with Jamie Mullarkey, but I'm also going to go with Nasrat Haqparast. It's a 50-50 fight. It's a coin toss, really. Again, you're not missing anything. Nasrat Haqparast had a pretty high-paced fight his last time out. Still boring. I remember it, man. Still boring. Whereas Jamie Mullarkey, man, this guy, he's got knocked out by Jalen Turner. I think he got knocked out by Muhammad Naimov as well. And he just scrapes by John Makdessi in a decision, old man John Makdessi. Nasrat Haqparast also scraped by John Makdessi in a razor-close decision. I just got to be honest about this one. No need to look too deeply into the weeds. Jamie Mullarkey's got the KO power. Nasrat Haqparast is the cleaner boxing, but Jamie Mullarkey's got better kicks. That's it. Who are you going to go with? You could go with the power of Jamie Mullarkey. You could go with the cleaner boxing of Nasrat Haqparast. But one thing you know is that this is probably going to be a decision that will never be rewatched again unless you have to. Or unless you're a tape guy and you want to go to the lab. You want to use the beakers and the test tubes to figure out who's winning the next fight on the prelims. You're probably not going to want to rewatch that one. But fuck it. I'm going Nasrat Haqparast. Now that I think of it, he actually does have a decent chin. And I just think he's got good output. He showed good output in his last fight. And I think he's just going to outland Jamie Mullarkey, where Jamie Mullarkey lands more leg kicks but doesn't land the damaging shots up top. I'm going with Nasrat Haqparast to win this one by decision. Let's get on to the next fight. Sumudaerji versus Allan Nascimento. Sumudaerji got brutally finished and submitted by Matt Schnell. I was there in person. One of the best comebacks I've ever seen. Matt Schnell dropped like multiple times. Guy doesn't have a chin though, but let's give him some respect. He battled back and finished Sumudaerji on the ground by TKO and then got the submission. I think the referee should have stepped in earlier. Just way too much damage. Another horrifically late stoppage. No one bats an eye. Some of these late stoppages, they don't get talked about enough. But it's good to bring up late stoppages every now and then. Fighter safety and whatnot. I totally get it. I'm going to go with Allan Nascimento, okay? Allan Nascimento submitted Carlos Hernandez. That's the guy that finished Denise Bondar. That's the guy that I'm picking to lose to Tatsuro Taira. So he finished Carlos Hernandez in the first round. He's only lost to one guy in the UFC. That's Tagir Ulanbekov. And that was what? By decision? That's not a bad loss at all. You know, losing by split decision to Tagir Ulanbekov. And then he beat Jake Hadley, and then submits Carlos Hernandez. And again, Carlos Hernandez, there's a reason why I'm picking against him against Tatsuro Taira, because I feel like he is susceptible to getting submitted and taken down. His ground game is not a strong suit. Allan Nascimento's ground game is his strong suit. He trains at a shoot box, very close friends and training partner of Charles Oliveira. And I think he is going to be able to take down Sumudaerji, impose his will, and submit him. Don't want to hype up Sumudaerji too much just because it was an entertaining fight against Matt Schnell. We can't really look too deeply into his power against a guy like Matt Schnell, who doesn't notoriously have a good chin. And Sumudaerji's been submitted a bunch of times in his career. So I'm going to go with Allan Nascimento, who's looking pretty good, looking pretty solid in his UFC run. Great training camp, shoot box. And Sumudaerji took a ton of damage in his last one, who's been submitted before. And I'm not even looking into that submission loss against Matt Schnell. But I'm going to go with Allan Nascimento to pull this one off. Now we have the captain, the UFC legend, Anthony Smith. Guys, tip your cap. Moment of silence. The king is back, okay? I actually think he's got a decent chance to win this one, man. He took down, what's his name? Ryan Spann, okay? He took down Johnny Walker. Beautiful takedown in the first round against Ryan Spann. Beautiful takedown in the first round against Johnny Walker after he got hurt as well. Khalil Rountree has never gotten past that top 10 level guy. Yes, he's got a win over Eric Anders that's famous. He got invited to the Joe Rogan podcast because of it. His Muay Thai kicks are nasty. He's the king of knocking out guys right outside the rankings. But Anthony Smith, for his entire career, has beat up on those guys outside the top 10. Like, that's kind of what he's made a career off of. I'm still going with Khalil Rountree. I still think he's going to beat Anthony Smith because his strength is Anthony Smith's weakness. But do not make any mistake about it. If Anthony Smith gets a takedown on Khalil Rountree, I still think that there's a difference between the skill level on the ground, the grappling, the size of Khalil Rountree versus someone like Ryan Spann. Ryan Spann may have survived last time, but I don't think Khalil Rountree is going to be able to survive. Maybe these guys have trained back in the day. I don't know why Anthony Smith was so gun-ho about taking this matchup. It makes me think maybe these guys have trained and Anthony Smith has gotten the better of him. I don't mean to be one of those guys that was saying, like, Volk, I think Volk's got a trick up his sleeve, man. This could just be one of those moments where he's thinking to himself, you know what, if I can't beat this guy, then I don't deserve to be here. But there may be a little bit more to it. He could submit Khalil Rountree if he gets him down, and he could get him down. Khalil Rountree is not a guy that's really known for having this rock-solid takedown defense. Yes, he's gotten a couple of good wins. Yes, he just knocked out Chris Daukaus. He beat Dustin Jacoby, robbery, clear robbery. He beat Carl Roberson, Modestas Piskauskas, but he's also lost to Marcin Paraknio. He's also gotten destroyed by Ion Cutelaba. Now, Ion Cutelaba, he's much more dangerous with his ground and pound. He's much more of a physical, explosive fighter than Anthony Smith. I know Anthony Smith would tell you he's the more explosive physical man, but that's just on paper, of course. Marcin Paraknio, not a good loss at all. But Khalil Rountree seems to be coming on strong at this point in his career. I'm just going to pick him to completely shred the legs of Anthony Smith early on, and I think it's going to really inhibit Anthony Smith's movement. The biggest reason why I'm picking him is because although Anthony Smith beat Ryan Spann in his last outing, and it was a good win, it was like the perfect Lionheart performance where he gets destroyed in the second round, breaks his orbital bone, and battles back through adversity to outstrike Ryan Spann. But Ryan Spann wasn't kicking him, man. All right, and Anthony Smith has literally said on multiple podcasts at this point that leg kicks are his issue. That's his downfall, and he can't do a damn thing about it. All right, Ryan Spann threw like 4 or 5 kicks throughout the entirety of his fight with Anthony Smith, and I know Khalil Rountree is a much more intelligent fighter than Ryan Spann because 99.9% of UFC fighters have a better fight IQ than Ryan Spann, okay? He's up there with the worst of them. Khalil Rountree is going to destroy the legs of Anthony Smith. He may be smaller than Smith. He may be susceptible to getting taken down. If he gets taken down early, it could be a wrap. So I'm not going to be one of these guys that's writing off Anthony Smith that much. I just have to pick against him here because it's also on short notice. And Anthony Smith's body has been declining steadily throughout the years. I mean, he's really lost a lot of his muscle. And if he's looking worse and worse every time he gets on the scales for full training camp fights, what is he going to look like on 2 weeks' notice? You know what I mean? When there wasn't really a fight on the horizon. I don't think he's going to look great. And I just think that his movement is going to be really massively hindered with the low kicks, the strong low kicks of Rountree. And I think that Rountree is just going to beat him up. Maybe even win a decision. And you know what? It's been a minute since Rountree has been taken down. It's been a minute. Like, we haven't seen this guy get dominated on the ground for years. I'm sure he's worked on it a little bit. Like, he's not been the most active fighter. He's gone away for a few years, and then he came back after losing to Marcin Paraknio and beat Piskauskas. He beat Jacoby and all of these guys. So he could be a different guy on the ground. Yeah, I'll go with Rountree by a dominant decision, just destroying the legs of Smith, dropping him with low kicks, maybe knocking him down a couple of times, and it's going to be almost impossible for Anthony Smith to really get close to him. So, yeah, maybe Smith can land a good shot. There was one moment in the Ryan Spann fight that I rewatched that surprised me. Smith threw like an overhand. It didn't really land, but it was fast. It was actually really, really slick and fast. He's got a chance. He's going to have a big size advantage. Rountree's not the biggest light heavyweight, and size at light heavyweight, it really does make a big difference. You'll notice that the guys in the top 10 at light heavyweight, they're all big. Anthony Smith is one of the smaller ones, and he's still bigger, a lot bigger than Khalil Rountree. So I'm going with Rountree by decision. On to the next one, Song Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez. If you're in the lab on this one, if you're dealing with the test tubes and the beakers, you're wasting your time. Okay, Chris Gutierrez isn't good enough to go a full 25 minutes with Song Yadong without getting knocked down a bunch of times or KO'd. Okay, Chris Gutierrez, he's the epitome of flash, 100%, man. And he looks like he's a high output guy, and in some ways he is. But if you actually get down to the nitty gritty of it and you watch this guy fight, he's just out here moving around, doing all these fancy movements, these fancy feints against super mediocre competition who he's taking 2 decisions. If you want to stray away from really getting into the X's and O's, let's just look at the competition that these guys are beating. Ricky Simone, that's a guy that finished Jack Shore, and he may not look as fancy as Chris Gutierrez, but he's dangerous. He's a great grappler. He's got good cardio. Song Yadong dropped him 3 times in that fight, controlled every single round, and showcased the most patient version of himself and knocked him out in the 5th. Okay? Chris Gutierrez is out here getting a decision against Alatengeli. It's like, listen, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but who the fuck is that guy? Okay? He's out here getting beat by Pedro Munoz. And Pedro Munoz is a crafty vet. He's got a hard head. He's good, but he got dropped by Pedro Munoz. That's a guy that's going to make you pay if you're out here fucking around, trying to feint and snake charm someone. All right? This ain't the bottom of the barrel at middleweight. This is the top of the bantamweight division. Song Yadong should be at the top 5. He's good enough to be at the top 5. He's made massive improvements. This is a guy that beat Marlon Chito Vera 3 years ago. And I know that's a robbery. Fair enough. It was close enough to where they gave it the song. That guy was 23 years old at the time. All right? You know how much of a gap someone can make up from 23 to 26? You know how much skill a guy can improve on? Song Yadong is going to go in there and totally show you guys why. Flash, feints, all these fancy schmancy movements, leaving your hands down, moving back like this, trying to be Mr. Slick. Why that doesn't work when you're against a striker that's got vicious KO power, that's got insane speed. You think Chris Gutierrez is fast? Song Yadong's faster than him. You think Chris Gutierrez is flashy? Song Yadong doesn't need that shit. Okay? He's going to show you why the basics beat the flash and the funk, whatever the fuck you want to call it, especially when you don't have that threat of the takedown. Maybe Aljamain Sterling can go in there, no power, and funk it up with Song Yadong and take him down. Not Chris Gutierrez, man. Pitter-pat low kicks. I'm just going to say it like this. Throw anyone else in there with Frankie Edgar. Throw anyone else in there that's got some speed, all right, that's got good coordination and isn't a geriatric in there with Frankie Edgar after that guy got KO'd 3 times in a row. They've got the same amount of hype as Chris Gutierrez, okay? For real. The bantamweight division is filled with guys that are fast, filled with guys that are nice and slick, but Chris Gutierrez is the epitome of a guy that looks flashy. That, again, it's like, what's the method other than running around the octagon, prancing around, looking like you're playing tennis? All right? Get out of the lab. Song Yadong is going to knock this man down, and he's going to finish him. 2nd round. Made it close with Corey Sandhagen. All right? I would understand if Song was one of these immature young fighters that he used to be, where he's out here swinging for the fences like a caveman and isn't patient and just lets his hands go and gasses out. He doesn't gas out. He's got a good gas tank. He's got a great team around him. He's the most patient he's ever been. Sandhagen talked about how it was eerie fighting Song Yadong because he expected him to be a little bit more immature in the cage. He expected him to chase after him a little bit more, and he was really patient and a lot faster than he expected. And he also hit extremely hard too. So he was a little bit worried to engage with Song Yadong because he would engage and Song wouldn't. And he was thinking to himself, what the fuck's going on here? Like, when is this guy going to go? And when he would go, he would show him why everyone's afraid to engage with him. Chris Gutierrez isn't going to really engage like that. But these little pit-pat leg kicks that don't really take anyone's movement away, that's another thing. Like, this isn't Jonathan Martinez who's TKOing people, hitting them to the legs. This isn't Merab Dvalishvili hurting Petr Yan with low kicks earlier. Petr Yan using his low kicks to hinder the movement of Corey Sandhagen early. This is Chris Gutierrez, a little pitter-pat leg kicks trying to be fancy, looking like a conductor like Darren Till out there. And Song Yadong's got more effective, more powerful leg kicks. He's got a granite chin. He's taking flush head kicks. I can't wait. I can't wait for Song Yadong to go out there and beat this guy. Do not be that guy that's saying, this is it, man. Chris Gutierrez finally getting the respect he deserves. Hardcore fans know this is a banger. It's a decently fun fight because Gutierrez is still skilled. Song Yadong is fun to watch, but it just does nothing. I'd rather see Song Yadong actually have a fight that does something for his career, because it's like, if he wins, he gains nothing. If Gutierrez wins, he gains everything, and Song Yadong goes back 10 steps. So I'm going to go with Song Yadong to knock out Chris Gutierrez in the second round. That's when Song usually lets his hands go. Gutierrez has a good chin, but, listen, man, I don't think that you're going to be able to nullify Song Yadong's striking game, the boxing especially, if you aren't throwing like a lot of heavy, powerful shots as well. If you don't have the threat of the takedown, I think it's going to make it real nice and comfortable for Song Yadong to get settled into the fight. And I think that he's either going to drop Chris Gutierrez a few times and just control the fight and land the more damaging shots, or he's going to TKO him in the second. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time.